Hello everybody, my name is Moxham and welcome to the third part of settings in the Blender game engine. I want to congratulate you for making it this far and making it through and following through the very long and tedious part 2 and 1. This one is going to be a bit shorter and we're finally going to wrap it all up. So before we continue, I made a mistake and at the end of the last part, part 2, we were having an issue on line 72 where I was trying to change a string to an integer, or an integer to a string. That's because I made the very stupid mistake of forgetting to put this in. I was talking the whole way through about how we index the position of the list based on what the text says, but I actually forgot to actually write in the part where it indexes the list. I just wrote the text into it. So that's all you have to do. All you have to do is add res list.index. In line 71, right there. Cool, so let's recap what we've done so far. So in the very first part, we wrote this nifty piece of script here, which read this settings file on our hard drive and read it and loaded it into the Blender game engine. Once it was loaded into the Blender game engine, this then formatted it into the global dictionary so that we could read it and have it open up, logically. Then we went through and applied these settings from the settings file on the hard drive to the game as it started. In part 2, we then displayed this data onto our little buttons here, our text objects, and then created the interaction of when you click it, it changes the settings. For example, if full screen stays on, if I click it, it'll turn off. And then we actually went through and did the apply button, so when you click apply it actually takes the changes that you've made and applies them to your game. And now the very last thing that we've got to do, which I accidentally left here, so you can see what we're going to be doing in this tutorial, that's all it is taking what we've changed and writing it back into the hard drive so that the next time we open the game it'll open with all the settings that we had from the previous session. So I'm going to be very courageous and delete this and do it all from memory. So brave. Okay, I just gotta open up my system console. There we go. I'll throw it over there. And I'm just gonna open up my settings text file. Cool, I'm just gonna make that a bit smaller. Awesome, I'm gonna leave that there. Okay. So let's first just put in a comment, and we're just going to say printing settings to settings.csv. Awesome. Now I warn you now, since the last two parts I was running on 2.76 release candidate free, and now I've moved to the full version of 2.76. And this really weird issue has happened to all my scripts on every single game that I'm working on, and it's losing all the indents. So you might see me battling the indentations and stuff off the script, but hopefully we won't have too many problems. Okay, so we need to make the indent in line with the else above it, because this is inside of the indent of the apply button, because we're still working with, if they click apply, we're going to write it into the settings. So we're going to make a module called def, and we're going to call it settings. Now of course you can name it whatever you want. I was fairly uncreative when I wrote this and just called it settings. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do what we did in the initialization script, and we're first going to open up our file and read it again. Because what we need to do is we actually need to check that we're writing in the correct stuff. So here we go. I believe that's right. That's right. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to just change where it says file to setting.csv. And we're going to change db to just reader. Cool, and then what we're going to do is we're going to create an empty dictionary for us to store in our current settings. So all I've done is put in some empty curly brackets, and that's created an empty dictionary which we can fill. I'm then going to create an integer, which is just going to equal 1, row num, and we're going to go through every single row inside of our text. So for row in reader, now remember reader is currently our CSV file, our settings.csv file. So for every row inside of that file, we're just going to check if that row isn't an empty. Now of course we're checking if it isn't an empty list because the reader is reading each row as a list, and it will be a list of 2, the option in the setting. Okay, and we're going to just put that row into our temporary dictionary based on the row number. So row number 0 will equal rows, and then what we'll do is we go row num plus equals 1. So the next time this for loop runs, this is going to go into a different section. Okay, and then we're just going to close that file. rfile.close. And moving on, we're now going to write. So we're going to create a W file. And our W file is going to be the same as this, but instead of having an R there, which stands for read, we're going to change it to a W, which stands for write. And then we're going to go, keep in mind we're still, I don't know why I wrote W file. We're still just finding the directory. So csv.writer, and then we put the directory there, and we set the delimiter to a semicolon. Okay, now what that means is that when we write a row, we've got to make sure that we write a list, and for each section of that list, it's going to write it in wherever the comma is. It's going to put a semicolon to indicate the new column. Okay, and then we're going to do the same as before. We're going to create a integer, and the way we're going to do this is we're going to just do a while loop. So while the write num is less than the row num. Now of course this for loop is already run for every single row in the reader, so the row number is going to be at its highest point, so how many ever rows there are is what number it'll be. So that way we can actually check that we're writing in the right number of rows. Okay, so the very first thing we're going to write in is our resolution. Now we have the same problem that we have in the last part, whereas we are going to be reading it from the text, but we've got 2 values. We've got the height and we've got the width, and in our text it's all just 1. So what we need to do is we need to find the x in between the height and the width. Now where did I write that? I'm looking for an x and a y. Here it is. I'm going to put that before our while loop, like so. I think that looks right. Yep. Cool. So we're going to go if setting temp. I'm just going to change that to settings temp because I'm going to have to think through it every single time. Settings just seems more natural. We're going to go write num 0, which is looking for the first, so that's looking for the option. So what we're doing is we're actually checking our dictionary, and we're going to go, okay, if our dictionary, if the first row says that it's a window width, we're going to rewrite that row with our new width. So that's what we're going to write next. So writer.write row, sorry, that's not a slash, it's supposed to be a period. And then we're going to do parentheses, and then because we have to write in a list, we're going to create a list, and of course our option is going to be window width, like so, and our next one is going to be the integer value of our text object. And we're looking for everything before the X symbol. Awesome. And we're going to go elif, and we're going to do the same thing for our height. So I'm just going to copy that and go height instead. And I'm going to copy this as well, except for we're looking for everything after y. Okay, well, that's height and width done. This is it's not going to take long. Only 7 more things to do, 6 more things, 7 more things to do. And most of it we can just copy and paste. So for full screen, we're going to take that, except for we're going to write in full screen. And what we're going to do is we're going to check if scene.objects text 0.001 text equals on. So if our little button here says that it's on, we're going to write into our script that our, again, a bracket inside parentheses, that our full screen and our option column is going to equal 1. And then of course else, we're going to, if it doesn't say on, of course it's going to be false then, and we're going to go 0. And remember, false wants to be our default in case we do anything wrong. Next one. So next one is vsync. So elif, and I can copy this line again. Oh, as soon as I can get that S in there. And we're just going to go vsync, vertical sync, elif settings temp right number, vertical sync. Now of course this isn't on off, we've got 3 settings here, we've got on, off and adaptive. And of course off wants to be our default, so we leave that to last. So we're going to go, and the same here, we're going to go if scene.objects equals on, except for now we're looking for text object number 2. We're going to go and we're going to write the row, except for vsync now has to be a solid, hold on, what am I talking about? Lost my train of thought. Yeah, vsync. Whatever. Okay, and we can just copy this, and we can paste it like that, except for we want it to be an elif, and we want to go if it's adaptive, and if it's adaptive we want vsync to write in as number 2, and in else we're going to write it in as a 0 because it will be false. Just let me check that. Yes, it looks good. Okay, now the next one is anisotropic filtering, and of course we have multiple settings here. We have off, 2, 4, 8 and 16, but the thing that's different from everything else is that the value we're actually writing into our file is actually what's being set in the text object. So everything except for off we can just copy in, and of course off wants to be our default. So what we're going to do is we're going to go elif, elif, and we're going to just make sure that our dictionary says we are checking for anisotropic filtering, and if it is, we're going to go if scene.objects text.003 text does not equal off, it's going to be a number, right? It's going to be either 2, 4, 8 or 16, in which case we can just go writer.write row, and in our parentheses and in our brackets we're going to go anisotropic filtering. Got to be very careful not to make a spelling mistake because it will snowball. It'll bring us an error when we try and load it again after we save it. So anisotropic filtering, and we are going to just go scene.objects text.003 text, like so, with the apostrophe. Awesome. And of course, if that doesn't work, it must be an off, in which case we're going to go else writer.write row I'm going to go anisotropic filtering, and it's going to be a 0 for off. I think it's 0. Can never quite remember. I think it might be 0. Cool, so what's next? Motion blur. Aleph. Settings. Temp. Oh, sorry. Brackets, not parentheses. Settings. Temp. Right num. Zero equals motion blur. Ooh, hold on. Is motion blur with a capital B or a lowercase b? That's a lowercase b, sorry. Couldn't remember. I should be more consistent, shouldn't I? Okay, so motion blur, and we're going to just go the same as pretty much our full screen one here. Actually, no, just those 3 lines we need. Except for now we're looking at text object number 4, and instead of writing in full screen, we're going to write in motion blur. Motion blur. Awesome, I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it a few times. Like so. And then we are going to go frame rate, and after that we have profile, and after that we have debug. So let's just go through and change all of these. So now we're dealing with text 5, text 6, and text number 7. And instead of writing that in, we want frame rate there instead of motion blur, profile, and debug. Oop. And that is that done. Awesome. What do we do next? Okay, so next we need to, on the same indentation level, go else. And we're going to go writer dot write row settings temp right num. So what that's going to do is it's going to look at it. Sorry, there's no bracket there. And because we've stored everything that already existed, if it can't find any of these, it's just going to write what we already have stored into that row. So it's a bit of a fallback sort of thing. And then, of course, we need to go write num plus equals 1. And then, going down 1 indentation, we're going to go wfile.close to close the file because we're finished. And we're just going to make sure that indent matches the opening of it, and it does. And then another indent down from that, we're going to run the module. Settings. Great name. Awesome, and that's got to match this indentation here. Perfect, I think that's perfect. Awesome. So I'm just going to save that. And we're going to go, I'm going to scooch this across so that we can see our text file. Because when we run the program, hopefully we're going to get a little dialog pop up there, which is going to ask us to reload it because it's been changed. So, standalone. And let's do, that is not good. Not a good start. Let's look at what we did wrong. An indent does not match any outer indentation level. Okay, so I'm just going to try this. Convert white space to tabs. And of course I'm going to change the full screen to 0 there. Okay, try this. Okay, that's working. And we're just going to turn on frame rate debug and profile. Note how it says 000 there. If we hit apply and we click into here, a dialog hasn't popped up, which means something's gone wrong. Okay, setting temp is not defined. What line is that? That is line number 177. Settings temp. Okay, that hasn't erased that. Cool. So we're going to go standalone. And we're going to go on, apply. And if we click this, oh, awesome. We've got this little dialogue here. The file has been modified by another program. Ooh, I wonder which one. Do you want to reload it? Yes. And we've got a error. Okay, guys. So luckily, oh, did I talk about this at the beginning? I hope I did. So pretty much you need to make, if you haven't already, I'm very, very sorry, but make a copy of your settings, because that's dead. We have to delete that because it's been emptied out, because we have an error. And we're going to just remove the copy. So if we open this, we get our settings again, and I'm just going to Control-C and Control-V it. And now let's look at the error we got. So text .000 key is not in list, and that is line 188. Text. Oh, bother. I've done this for everything, haven't I? Okay. This is a good place to use this. So wherever we say text, I'm going to replace it with text R. So if you go find next, it's going to find that. No, that one's okay. I'm going to find next, it's going to find that. We're going to go replace. No. That one we want to replace. What I'll do is I'll look for text dot instead. So if we find next, and we're going to replace it with text R dot, period. Replace, 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 replace. Cool, and that should be that fixed. That was silly. That was just me forgetting the namings of everything. So let's try this again. That hasn't been killed. Here we go. Okay, so we're going to turn frame rate profile and debug on. We're going to go apply. Oh, I forgot the profile. Apply. Now I've got a dialogue. Awesome. Do you want to reload? Yes. Perfect. Working like a charm. There we go. So it's updated to have frame rate profile and debug on. So now if I close this and I start my game again, it's now going to start not right. What happened? Line 40 in... Oh! Okay, see what's happened here? I've accidentally got Win W on both of them. So, oops. There we want to go window height. Cool, and we just got to change that over here as well. Make sure to save it. And let's try again. Ah. Of course. No? Oh, of course, because it's just checked that twice. So we just change that to 600. I'm going to go start standalone player. Working. That's good, that's good. I'm going to turn those four off, and let's turn Anisotropic Filtering to 16 and VSync off. Apply. Let's click this, asking me to reload it. Yes, it's all changed there perfectly. Now let's see if it starts the game again with those same settings. Awesome. And if I hit escape, we have no errors. Perfect. Well, that concludes the series. I will be putting a link to download the final .blend so you can play with it yourself. Thank you for following this tutorial through to part 3, and hopefully I'll see you next time with a new tutorial with hopefully teaching you something essential that you need for your game. I'll save that, so I'll see you next time. Goodbye.